Hello and welcome to All For United WFC. Hello and welcome to All For United with me, John Foster, MUFC. A slightly different show tonight on Monday. Natalie's out and about. Obviously, Benny's not around just yet, but Benny will be back next week. So look out for Benny. But we've got Emma Sanders joining us. How you doing, Emma?
Yeah, good, thanks. Good, thank you. I was pleased to see that I still made the cut in the intro video because I noticed I've been cut from your cover photo on Twitter. So.
Oh, Matt, what's going on there? Well, no, you sent it me, but I never realised.
I'm only messing.
Oh, Matt.
Why is blaming me? I just get told what to put on it. It's the one that's skiving that's responsible. Put this on, put that on. It's a command. It's not even a can you please. But anyway.
Yeah, blame her. She's not here, so it's all her fault.
Can you remember when I messaged Stovich saying I'll put you on for the time being, but you will probably be cut off in a couple of months' time? That was so funny. I said that. I'll be honest, Oh, yeah, never mind. Yeah, you're still on the intro, Emma. I'm sure that'll stay for good. Matt, thanks for joining me on this show. We've got everyone for a reason. An article went out on Thursday that interests all WSL fans and all Championship fans as well, especially Man United fans. The leading article, or the leading part of the article was to do with the potential signing of ours. We've been talking about this player for, I don't know, maybe it seems like nearly a full year, but definitely since the summer. Matt, can you remember where the actual rumour came from? Is it where we thought that she was going to be out of contract and then obviously she extended until January? It's been around a while, hasn't it, this rumour?
Yeah, I think it was sort of lingering from summer. And I know sort of fans talked about her. Do you know what? I honestly genuinely think it came from Nat. I think it was a player Nat had watched or wanted. And then it was rumours, wasn't there, in summer that it might have been possible. And then obviously there was stuff talked about where she was on the move, then she wasn't, and then everybody said, oh, well, she'll be on the move in Jan, and here we are. So I don't know, genuinely don't know where it's come from. I know she's a big favourite of Natalie's, and that's all I can say. Obviously, anybody that knows Nat knows she loves tweeting about transfers, and I think she speaks to other people and other fans, and I think they just compile a list and Nat tweets it out, and that's what we get. And then most of the time we're told no, but sometimes it's the odd yes, and yeah, here we are.
Yeah, obviously Nat likes her, but several others do as well. All across Twitter, who obviously don't live in England. We're talking about Blackstenius, and she's got a lot of fans out there before she's even joined United. And we've obviously been talking about it, and the only difference now is, Emma's actually mentioned it that it could be a possibility. Emma, I don't know if you got the article in front of you or Matt, but I don't know what your exact words were, but. What are your thoughts, Emma, with what you've written?
Well, I'm glad that you said could, because the amount of people that have quote tweeted me today saying that she's now officially joining is hilarious. But it happens every time. No, I think, as you said, I certainly heard rumours in the summer, but I never mentioned it because, as far as I was concerned, I wasn't 100% on it, and I won't put anything out. Unless it's in the gossip piece, but I heard the rumours later on after the gossip piece had already gone out, and yeah, there was a bit of talk about her being a potential target, and then obviously in the last couple of months since Casey's left, I've heard that she was a target in the summer. So naturally, with her being out of contract in January, there's a lot of talk about her, potentially moving to United, and I think a lot of people would expect that move to happen. So essentially that's what I put in the piece, really, is that that move is kind of expected to come through, but that by no means that it's happened or it's happening. But I think there's certainly something to be excited about, because as I say, that's links that, from what I've been told, is something that United have been sort of looking at for a while now. So yeah, I wouldn't be surprised. I think it would be a terrific signing.
Yeah, it goes hand in hand with something that I've heard separately, and it is another journalist, not from England. Only recently been in touch with him, and he says something similar as well. Not so much about United, but definitely being on the move. So I'm not going to mention what journalist it was because it was like a private message, but he was basically saying that people who are very close to Stina usually talks a hell of a lot about potential moves. All of a sudden, at the moment, they're staying really tight-lipped, as if something is potentially happening. So, we're not saying I'm not saying it's United. He's not saying it's United, but he is definitely saying that something is happening somewhere along the lines. And, Matt, I'm sure you'd be a fan of seeing this. We mentioned it on the New Year show as well, didn't we, about Blackstenius coming in or another out-and-out goal scorer. What do you think should bring to the team, Matt?
Well, I'm going to state the obvious here, but goals. I mean, that's what we're here for, isn't it, John? But yeah, I think, if you look at her record, obviously she's been in France, she's played in Sweden, she's been all over, and, even for the national team as well. And in the Swedish league, her strike rate is very good. Just looking now, and it's pretty much, 1 in 2 or 1 in 3. The national team as well. And obviously she's only young. Well, I say young, 25 is a good age that for obviously bringing in somebody to kick us on and push us on towards Europe. So, yeah, I think, listen, we've talked about it, haven't we? We've needed goals, and not even just this year. For me, we've needed goals since we came up. We've always been, I don't know if wasteful is too harsh, but I'm going to use the word wasteful anyway. We've not converted the chances we create. And I think, especially last year, it cost us because, we were close to Arsenal in terms of points, but looking at it, probably a million miles away in terms of what we need for the squad. And, it's something talked about a lot. People said, oh, well, if we'd got Europe last year, but to be brutally honest, looking at this year's squad, if it was in Europe, I don't know. Do you know what I mean? I wouldn't be too chuffed because I just think we're not quite ready and we're not at that level and we would need a few more additions. So listen, somebody like this is a start. I just, I hope if she does come in, that we can just, like I say, just kick on. Obviously, it's going to take time to adapt. She's not played in England before. We've seen people come over from abroad. It's taken them sort of 6 to 12 months to adapt and settle in. But, at the same time, we've still got 2 forwards as well. It's just about keeping the other one, Martha Thomas, fit. So, interesting signing. And it's probably up there with the Jackie Gronin one for me in terms of like the size of it. Obviously, yeah. Jackie came in first season of WSL. Obviously, we've got Mary Earps and Hayley Ladden that year with quality signings as well. But if you're talking like your star and your top of the list, I think, did you come 10th on the Ballon d'Or list? So, this is like, for me, like I say, it's up there with sort of world class, and it's a start. It shows sort of, intent by the club and the board. And yeah, something I'd like to see happen. One thing I will ask though, John, because I've just brought up my messages from Nat, and it says, ask Emma on the percentage of, is it done? So I'm assuming by that, if you were to give a percentage of yes, done, or no, not done.
Well, like I say, as far as I'm aware, it's not been done. Otherwise, I would have reported it as done.
Yeah, possible.
So, yeah. I've just been told it's possible, and it's certainly one that people have been keeping an eye on. And as John said before, I've heard similar things from the sort of Sweden end that she's expected to be on the move. But yeah, as to where that is, I think I haven't got anything sort of from their end that it's United. It's more sort of from our end that. But we'll see what happens there. But I'll go with no. It's not done as far as I'm aware. But who knows? They could announce it tomorrow. You don't know. So.
I think, Matthew, you took the words out of my mouth when you mentioned Jackie Gronin, because this signing for me, we haven't really had such a big signing since Jackie, in my opinion. Like getting Christian Press and Tobin Heath, that was like something, something out of the ordinary. You can't say, as good as Honor is, she's developed with us. She wasn't like, galactical is a strong word, but she wasn't like a superstar before she came to us, as like a well-known player, I should say. Russo was well-known, but obviously she still hasn't, she's getting there at the moment. You think that Blackstenius coming in really does kind of like lay the market down a little bit as well, and finally show, we are ambitious, and that this opens up a lot of doors as well, because we can now sign Blackstenius, but we could also sign a young championship player, and all of a sudden the fans wouldn't mind the young championship player anymore, and we can potentially talk about that in this show or in future shows with them as well during the transfer window. But if it was just Martha Thomas and a Championship player, everyone would just be up in arms. But if we have that real well-known player and a Championship player, all of a sudden it's okay. And almost it's like a good blend, because we want to see youth, we want to see the young English players come in, but we also want to see the best in Europe as well, don't we? Emma, just what are your thoughts on like Man United actually going for this kind of caliber of player now? It's something that obviously that we're screaming out for, but it kind of looks like that we're actually making a few moves at least.
Yeah, I mean, whenever I've asked Mark about transfers or squad rotation or squad depth, he's always kind of maintained the fact that I think he quite likes having a fairly small squad. I think he likes the idea of a consistent starting 11 and sort of gaining that momentum. But I think he wants to add those bits of quality. Whereas in the past, maybe other managers in the WSL, not necessarily Casey, but yeah, other managers might be a bit more prone to building the squad depth as opposed to improving the starting 11. I get the impression that Mark is more interested in improving the starting 11, and in turn that will obviously improve the squad depth. But I think, he's not looking to have a massive squad. So I think that's where perhaps this caliber of signing, I think, is something to get a bit excited about and get a bit intrigued about if obviously it does come through, because yeah, I think that would be a big signing for Mark, and in his first transfer window, really, because he didn't really have that much time in the summer, and all of the business was pretty much done. Most of the players who he probably would have wanted to bring to the club were already brought or weren't on the market. So I think this is where the January window for him in particular, it's less about building the squad and more about just seeing if they can pick one or two real quality players to bring in. So yeah, hopefully he gets one or two over the line, but I know that certainly is the intention. So yeah.
Just on this one then, so if Blackstenius does come into the starting 11, where would you put Russo?
I don't know. That's his problem, not mine.
Because we've actually, the last couple of 3 weeks, we on this channel, we've basically been saying that we want, well, I don't know if Matt agrees with this. I think Matt didn't agree with this, but a few of us did. We wouldn't mind seeing Russo actually on the wing with or without Blackstenius, because just the way we're playing at the moment, Russo's kind of starved of the ball up front, and she's doing so well with the ball at the feet, driving at the players. So we don't actually mind seeing Russo on the wing. Matt, do you want to just quickly jump in on that one?
Yeah, I've had a thought, John, because obviously I was having a bit of a nightmare yesterday, Wi-Fi wise, and I must have managed off about 2 minutes. But I had time to think today, and I was thinking about what Connor said about sort of the wing backs pushing high, and I thought, you know what, something like a 5-3-2 would work. So what my theory is now is she go alongside Leslie. Your wing backs can cover the width, and we'll. The thing is, though, the only issue I've got with it is it might sound a little bit defensive, but it just depends in terms of fitting it in. It's either that or carry on as a 4-5-1. But just, I don't know, because I've watched Leslie since she was sort of Chelsea development. I've seen her for sort of England youth groups. I've seen her at Brighton and now at United, sort of come the full circle. I just don't like the thought of her out wide. And I know when she first signed, she said, I want to come and I want to be a number 9, which is what she's always been. She's a goal scorer, but I don't know. I've just the thought of me out wide for her just frightens me to death.
You know what though? Like I had the same idea as Matt, to be honest. I think a back 5 is like on paper people think that's defensive, but it's only a back 5 out of possession. It's a back 3 in possession. Yeah. So it's essentially 5 across the midfield, or you move that to 4 in the front line. So I think a team like United, especially with the type of centre backs you've got as well, especially like Ethan Mannion, who's like a very ball playing centre back. I think there's definitely scope there, but yeah, we'll see.
So John, we're taking over now. That's it. It's tough.
Yeah. Just one last thing on Blackstenius before we move on to the rest of the article. Have you heard anything ever about other teams that might be in for across Europe or across WSL, or is it just basically is it just United rumours that you've heard, or have you heard rumours anywhere else, or what are your thoughts on that one?
Well, the initial rumours back in the summer was that she was that I'd heard was that she was looking at Europe, so that obviously included the WSL, and then that was when I obviously started inquiring about potential WSL clubs, and United's name came up. So Since then, I haven't heard any other name other than United. But because I think United were the team that was quite, well known to be interested in the summer, that's not to say that other clubs aren't in the running, because they might have pipped in, especially given the fact that she obviously was linked in the summer, clearly must have had some kind of, conversation, or there must have been some kind of, starting point as to how that sort of came about. So quite often, if one team shows a bit of interest, then another few might just, stick their toe in and see what it's all about. But yeah, I haven't heard any other teams. But it wouldn't surprise me if outside the WSL, if there were more European teams looking at her, I would not be surprised by that at all. Especially given, as I've reported in my piece, there's quite a lot of Scandinavian players, particularly, that are being linked with the WSL. So I think there could be a lot of movement that way. So I think just in general, that market has really opened up to clubs recently. So yeah, I think she'll be high up on the list, I would imagine, for several clubs.
Something else that you did mention, Man United related, could Blackstenius actually just be taking the place of Russo? So you did purposely mention Russo, where did this, well, I can't say where it's come from, but what are your thoughts on this, Emma? Why did you write it? Why did you make the whole fan base hate Casey?
So I obviously was aware about this in the summer, and clearly I didn't want to write it because of all the issues that was going on. Wanted to make sure it was 100%, and I also didn't think, there was a lot of talk about stuff that could potentially happen or could not happen. Naturally, I expected this reaction from the fan base, but I don't think it's anything to be worried about in the slightest, because what I think is the situation is that obviously Casey brought in Alessia when she was at the club. They had a good relationship, that they enjoyed working together. Russo was injured a lot while Casey was here. Didn't really ever get going. So naturally, when Casey left, on the terms and the manner in which she did, obviously there was a lot of players who would have felt loyal to her and would have wanted to play with her. And, before Mark came in, there was, I think from what I heard, there was, a lot of talk about sort of Alessia being quite keen to kind of follow Casey, and likewise. And obviously, as I reported in the piece, my understanding was that Casey, as part of her sort of agreement, upon leaving, she wasn't actually allowed to take any players with her for 6 months, which obviously takes it through to January. So naturally, I was told in the summer that might be something that they might look to do in January, but a lot has changed since then, which is why I don't think it's anything to really worry about. Russo's been playing really good stuff. She's clearly enjoying her football. I think Mark's done a great job of managing her. Obviously, Casey has settled in over at San Diego now. They've done a bit of business in the draft. So, I don't think it would make sense now for either party. And obviously, Russo is under contract. So until, I think it's until the summer. So at least. So, I think it's something not to be worried about. But I do think it's, there has to be a bit of cautiousness on United's part, that they need to just be wary that, while she is in good form, and obviously, she's played in the US before, she clearly enjoyed the experience, that, naturally, any player who's playing well, there's going to be interest from other sides. So, that's not to say that, Casey's been in touch with her this summer, this January. I actually don't think that is the case. But it was one that, like I said, had carried over from the summer, and it was kind of expected to just sort of be talked about a little bit in January.
And Tooney's the best mate, and Tooney's going to stay forever. So why does Russo need to leave? Matt, just your thoughts on that one. But Emma, we'll come back to you shortly and just ask you: can you see more English players going to United States? Not just because of Casey, but potentially. But I'll come back to that one shortly. But Matt, just your thoughts on Russo going back to America. You're kind of laughing at it a little bit, shaking your head. What's your thoughts on that one, mate?
Well, after listening to Emma, I think I can sleep a lot better now. No, I think, to be fair, I read it, and I don't know it was one of them. Like, obviously, you read something like that, and like everybody else on Twitter today, the immediate sort of thought is panic. And then I actually seen people making lists saying you can have this player, that player. People have tweeted us saying take this one. But funnily enough, Leslie's name wasn't on them lists. But no, I think, listen, she's only, what's she now, second season. She's a United fan. I know she spoke highly of sort of being back at home. Yeah, listen, she can go in 12 years. When she's sort of mid-30s or something, we'll release her. But no, in all seriousness, I think, this is why it's important that sort of we do sort of look to attract in the market the likes of, Stina, because it shows, doesn't it? It shows in her mind that we are staying competitive. And, we only heard Tuna recently say the reason she signed a longer-term contract was because she was happy with the vision and the way the club was going. So for me, we need to do that. A lot said about Ona and Jackie and their new deals, or people wanting them to sign new deals. And it's the same for Leslie. I don't know if she might have an option. I can't remember after this summer, but I think, you've got to keep growing, and we've got to hit the Champions League because you want to keep, your informed players at the club. So, hopefully she'll carry on. I have no doubts in my mind that she'll carry on. But, stranger things happen in football. I'm sitting here and I didn't expect Alex Greenwood to disappear after one season. So, things happen. Like Emma said, she's been to America. She might want to go back and play in sort of in that league as opposed to obviously sort of at the uni or college, whatever they call it, level. But yeah, it's something I'm not hugely worried on anyway, or not yet anyway. So yeah, fingers crossed she stays. She's a fan favourite. She's doing well. There's a lot more to come from her. She's one hell of a player. She just needs a strike partner. So yeah, fingers crossed.
Yeah, so I'm just curious because obviously we saw Amy Turner go over to the States. Obviously she's had reasons for that. Ebony Salmon's gone over. We seem to be hearing, I know it's only rumours, but we do seem to be hearing more of it. Can you see this happening more often now? Just more players going to the NWSL from WSL?
It's an interesting question because a few people actually sort of within the game have asked me this, and I've asked it obviously in turn. Personally, I don't feel like there's any more than there has been in the past. I think there's more movement in general around women's football. I think as it grows, it's less sort of in-house in terms of domestic leagues. As we've seen, there's a lot more European players that have come over to the WSL, for example. And obviously, we had the influx of the NWSL players coming over last season when COVID sort of impacted their league. So I think it's natural. And I also think given, the talent pool that is now a hell of a lot wider than it was a few years ago, the younger players, I feel like it's probably more attractive for the younger players to be looking towards the NWSL. But I think that's just so that they can gain a wide range of skills. I interviewed Gemma Bonner in person, which was great, by the way, because we haven't had many of them over the last year. But she actually came over to Salford and came into Media City with me. And obviously she left Man City to go to the NWSL and basically just to kind of push herself and challenge herself. And it was really interesting talking to her. Like one of the lines which stood out to me was she said that she felt like she was just getting comfortable in the WSL. And this is a player who, in my opinion, has been like grossly underrated for years at most clubs that she's been at. She's always been consistent. She's always been a high performer, and just kind of, I asked her the question actually about whether she felt there was more English players going over, and she said that there's certainly, I think, an appetite now for the young players to go and, get that experience of playing against world-class players week in, week out, because unlike here in the WSL where it still does remain quite top-heavy, a lot of the big European stars are obviously they're at the top-end clubs. You got your Sam Kerrs, etc. at Chelsea, whereas in the NWSL, they've got 2 or 3 world-class stars in every team, just because of the way that the league is and the way the draft system works. So I think that's the difference, is that if you're going over now, then you kind of get that physical experience for one, but you also get that kind of range of competition that you don't necessarily get in the WSL at this moment in time. Yeah. So to answer your question, I don't think there's any more players really looking to go over, but naturally, as I say, with the talent pool increasing, I just think there's more players in general that are playing women's football, that are coming through academies, that are getting to a professional level, and therefore there's obviously going to be more players that are going to be looking for game time, and I think that means that NWSL is going to be a destination.
Awesome. Just a couple more points then on Man United before we move on to the other teams. The fan base is talking about one potential player coming in. Just want to hear your thoughts on the likeliness of it, Emma.
I know what this is.
Who do you think it could be?
Rachel Daly.
Daly. Oh, is she coming then or what?
So, yeah, I mean, the amount of DMs I've had about this player, honestly, I've not heard a thing. I've not heard a single thing. Rachel Daly is one of those players who every transfer window gets linked with every club going because, you know, she's so versatile. She's so well liked. She's got so many good contacts and experiences and stuff. So, look, I'm not going to sit here and go, it's not happening, because with Rachel Daly, it's always a possibility. But no, hand on heart, I haven't heard a single thing linking her with Manchester United.
I want to bring you in because we obviously stalk everyone's Instagram. You do. I haven't got Instagram, but
yeah, I don't. I don't blame me.
Instagram, Twitter. You know, I'm not saying she's playing the game. I'm not saying anyone's playing the game, but they know that fans read everything, don't they? And you know, it does come across that. Let's put it this way: we wouldn't be surprised if it came about, would we? But what are your thoughts on that one, Matt?
It's funny because you mentioned Instagram, and I remember I think Natalie mentioned it, and she sent me a screenshot of something. I'm just trying to find it now. I can't even think. And it was basically, I think it might have been Millie, and Millie posted something and said, "Oh, you'd look good in red, Rachel." And then I think it was Mary Earps posted the eye emojis. Somebody else posted a winking face, and then I think Rachel replied with the eyes as well. So obviously, our fans this is it. Our fans being as passionate, as interested as they are, like you said, everybody goes on Instagram and who are they following?
Well, to be fair, now that I've heard that, I mean, she's coming. It's happening.
But no. So yeah, John. So like I say, you know, it's great because you know, like I say, our fans take that and run a mile. And it's funny because I can just picture it now. They'll all be sat there thinking, right, who can we wind up this week? Let's post something. And it's great. I find it funny. I don't think many people do, to be fair, but I just think it's great because they have that. And, you know, I've seen it in previous seasons where one of them said, oh, let's post this. And then they're all, oh, such a body said this to us and this is happening. So I just think it's great that they're sort of joining in on the banter. You know, they could say anything, couldn't they? I think it was the other day, there was a Spanish equivalent of April Fools. And somebody tweeted, oh, they've signed Mappy Leon, and everyone was having meltdowns from Barcelona. And then I think mainly sort of fans from here, it sort of took them by surprise because nobody realised actually it was sort of Spanish equivalent of April Fools. And she joined in on it. She replied something like, well, I'm not fully fit yet. I've eaten too much over Christmas. So listen, things like that are great. But sort of back on topic in terms of Rachel, listen, I'd be more than happy with Rachel coming in as a loan. And to be fair, we were talking, you mentioned Amy Turner before. She's actually at Old Trafford with Angrad James. That's watching a game, by the way, not signing on just before anybody takes this too far. But yeah, she's been watching the men's team, so you know, may as well chuck them into the mix as well for loans. But no, but like I say, sort of Rachel, you know, quality player, can sort of play wide right. I don't like her at right back, but she can play. She's played sort of out wide for West Ham, and she's played up front. So you know, if we can get her in, and it would be an option to look at, then let's do it. You know, if it's not, then it's not, and she can crack on with a pre-season.
So basically what we're saying is we're going to be playing 3-5-2. We're going to get rid of Honor and Blundell. We're going to have Gold on one side, Baitul on the other side. So that's our back five, back six with the keeper. There we go. Russo and Blackstenius up front, and the others can fight over the rest.
To be fair, Rachel Daly could probably play in goal as well.
Perfect.
Put her anywhere, she'll be sound.
We try and Mary up front, John.
Yeah, who knows? Matt, you did mention Londale coming in. We've got some players that haven't played too much game time at the moment, or we've got players who deserve game time and they just can't get the game time. Just one last thing on United, Emma. Potential loan deals going out to other clubs. Can you see that potentially happening this January?
You know what? It's something that I'm interested in because obviously when Mark came in, there wasn't too much time, as I say, to sort of, you know, figure out the squad. And obviously now he's had a few months to really look at the players. And I'm kind of interested in those players who are quite clearly too good for the academy level, who are making the step up. We obviously saw Carrie Jones sign a new contract, which suggests to me that she's probably above Maria Edwards in the pecking order. So I'm excited. I'm excited, and I'm interested to see what happens with Maria Edwards, because I think there's a decision to be made in January for her, and obviously on United on whether she stays and gets more game time, or whether she might want to go out on loan. So that's an interesting one. I think I personally that's just sort of one that I'm sort of keeping a bit of an eye on.
I was hugely surprised that she hasn't gone out on loan in the summer. I could understand it only because we were short on wingers at the time. So you're thinking if anyone could come through in any position on the pitch, it would be a winger, and she was next in line anyway. But she's not being used at all. I understand it. You got Fuso, you got 6 midfielders. You have got quite a strong squad when all fits. So for me, it's just natural that you've got to get her out there, and also to a high quality as well. And I know that she hasn't played much. I would like to have seen her go straight onto loan into a WSL team. She done well at Blackburn, Championship club. I'd have liked to have now seen her at a higher level in the WSL. That's what I would like to have seen happen in the summer. She's not got any game time. Would she fit into a WSL team now? We don't know. It might have to be a Championship club. Matt, where would you kind of see Maria going in January?
Yeah, I mean, listen, I've talked about this for a while. I was sort of similar to you, John, thinking I thought summer would be the one. Obviously, I can see why, like you mentioned, but I think there comes a point, and I might be wrong on this, but could she not have signed a dual contract outside the window? I think, Emma, you'll know more on that.
Yeah. So I think that's why there needs to be a decision made, because I think she needs to make that step up to a professional contract as such. So yeah, she can sign a dual contract as far as I'm aware at any point. So I think that would be the best scenario. Or she obviously signs a full professional contract with Man United, and then they loan her out, like they did with was it Emily Ramsey? I think they did that with. So yeah, that's obviously another option.
Yeah, so I think with that, John, I mean, listen, this is only me speaking as sort of me, but I'd loan her out. She did well with Blackburn. I think the Championship would be perfect. I think it's a physical league. It's a league where on the day most teams can beat each other. Like I say, did well with Blackburn. I would like to see her go to maybe sort of higher end. Blackburn last year were sort of mid-table, and then listen, very good club. Some good coaching was on there. Very good sort of youth setup and academy. But I think for me, if she can find a step up, then I'd look to obviously explore that. I think another one as well for me, and I believe she's sort of come back from an injury, but somebody like Rebecca May. She was obviously in and around the squad a couple of years ago now. Came on in I think it was the Cup against Reading when we went down there in our first WSL season. So, there's options, isn't there? The only thing is I don't know how depleted the dev squad is. Because obviously Chloe Williams has gone to Blackburn. We've loaned Saf Patel, the goalkeeper, to Blackburn as well. I say loaned. I think they're both dual contracts. But yeah, for me, it's just about better youngsters. You just want to see them step up, and I think 6 months in the Championship is a good start. But I'm a big fan of these dual registrations. I've talked about this quite a lot and before, and I know Natalie has as well. I just think they're good because they still get the full contact training with ourselves. So they'll still be trained by Man United, and then the club that they go to, if they train separate, they might get a chance to train with them as well. So it's good because they get the best of both worlds, sort of professional training and training with that club, but more importantly, they get game time at a higher level. Because I think the sort of thing for me, we spoke to Tom Fitton about this, was there's no in between. You've got your devs and there's nothing. It's like you can beat devs in 16 and you can beat devs at sort of 21, 22. So if there was like an under 18s or a 19s league in between, then fair enough. But at the minute, it's kind of a heck of a jump from your development squad to your first team, and especially when it's first team WSL. First team Championship's one thing, but going up another level. But yeah, just my thoughts on that. If we can loan a couple out or dual career them, let's do it.
Yeah, and we've done plenty of shows with dual careers, and I've done one just a couple of 3 days ago with Andy and Mike Fisher as well. Andy and Mike Harris, sorry, from Stourbridge. And that's right, yeah. Andy Fisher, Mike Harris. Yeah, and it's great because you do get to train like a full-time professional, but obviously playing constantly, aren't you? So it's great to see. We'll move on to Man City then, Emma. So you mentioned a player who could potentially be going out. Do you kind of just want to touch on that one?
So this was Janine Becky.
Yeah, sorry. Yeah, I should have jogged your memory. Yeah, Janine
yeah,
Becky.
yeah. No, yeah. That's an interesting one because yeah, I kind of just inquired about her because I thought she was a player that perhaps would want more game time. Naturally, because of the injury crisis at City, she's probably had a bit more than I think she maybe would have done because I think she was just sort of struggling to like find a starting place. Obviously, she had she had a really good summer. So yeah, I was sort of interested to see how she got on. So I made a few inquiries about her just out of interest. And yeah, sort of then heard that there were a few clubs in America that were certainly interested in her. That's the extent of it, really. I don't know whether she's had conversations with them. Don't know whether there's been any direct contact, whether or not that's gone to the next level. But there's certainly interest in America in Janine Becky. So yeah, that's an interesting one, I think, because like I say, I think when all of Manchester City when they get all their players back from injury, I don't really see where she fits in. Certainly in the starting 11. Like I say, I don't think she's kind of been used by Gareth Taylor, perhaps in the way that she would want to be. So I wouldn't be overly surprised if she went in January. But I do think, obviously she signed a new contract fairly recently. I do think if she was to go, I think it would probably be in the summer instead. But yeah, probably one to keep an eye on.
I think it's interesting, John, for me with City, because I know there was talk about KB, Karen Bardsley, maybe potentially going on loan. But I think the issue with City is not the issue, but there's quite a lot of players, I believe, out of contract in the summer. And I read something a few days ago about Caroline Weir potentially being on the move as well. And she's somebody, for me anyway, looking from the outside, really quality player, has shone for them this year. Obviously, they've had injuries, but it's going to be interesting. Obviously, they need numbers, they need bodies. They've got, when everybody's back fully fit, they've got a good squad, a squad that's easily capable of, getting in that top three, as we all know. Yeah, I don't know. It's a difficult one because if you look at it, and I always think, they signed, for me, two quality players in Kennedy and Ruby Mace. And obviously, there has been injuries, but they've not played. And I just think as a player, would you want to go into that knowing that you might be a stopgap until somebody else is back? But again, it just depends, doesn't it? I think that, they're not going to be a million miles away from sort of competing when everybody is back. But that said, they're going to need sort of bits in between, sort of now and when that happens. And obviously as well, sort of for next year when, the likes of KB and maybe Jill Scott and others maybe moved on.
Yeah, I think it's interesting, Matt, what you say there about sort of players, kind of knowing that they might be a stopgap for those players coming back from injury. And I think that's where there probably is an issue with City because I reported in the summer that Jess Park was set to go out on loan to Leicester. And then obviously because of the injury crisis, I do believe it is because of the injury crisis. Naturally, they kept her. She's obviously had a lot more game time than she probably would have expected. Obviously, as I said, Janine Becky was probably one of those who might have been, considering a move maybe, in the summer or, like I say, potentially this month. And then Karen Bardsley is one who's obviously a very experienced keeper. She went out on loan to go get more game time for the Olympics. It did pay off for her. Then obviously, sadly, she got that injury. So I think she's had her injury issues, but naturally, given her kind of the stage that she's at in her career, I think just getting some games in might be something that she's quite keen on. And I think that's where the Leicester link is interesting because specifically on Karen Bardsley, obviously, Carly Telford was another one in there. I do know that Leicester, absolutely, they're looking at a keeper, which is quite obvious because obviously Kirsty Lavelle, their number one, is out injured for long term. So naturally, they need someone in. So an experienced keeper like Karen Bardsley makes a hell of a lot of sense because she's got the WSL experience. They can bring her in on loan for a few months. That means, she doesn't have to leave Man City. It's not going to cost Leicester loads of money. And I actually think that would be an excellent signing, just to come in and just provide that cover as number one for a few months, just to sort of help Leicester get over the line. And the same with Carly Telford. She's a player that whenever teams have needed, a second keeper or to add to the squad depth, naturally as a very experienced international and a third choice at Chelsea, she's always getting inquiries about, but Chelsea don't, they seem quite reluctant to let her go. So I think it would be more a Karen Barsley, for example, that would join Leicester. But I do know, and obviously I'll put this in the piece, I know that Leicester are looking at a hell of a lot of targets. That does include a range of goalkeepers. I know they're looking at least one Serbian international, not necessarily in the goalkeeping position, but I know that they're looking in that market. So, who knows what happens there? But like I say, I actually think KB to Leicester would be a pretty decent loan signing. Actually, I think it would be good for all parties.
We'll come on to Leicester shortly. But what about City potentially strengthening then? Can you see them bringing anybody in? Because it's such a massive season for them. This is a season where not only United could push them out of the top three, but maybe Tottenham the way they're going. Can you see them maybe investing in just putting that extra bit in just to guarantee top three this season?
I think they have to, because like you say, Tottenham and West Ham they've got backing, and I know that if they get the players, if they get the targets they want, and I know Ollie Harder has actually been quite open about this in his press conferences. If they can identify players that will strengthen them, they will go after them, and they will certainly be backed by the club. And it's the same with Tottenham. So there's real competition there. Obviously, Man United are looking to strengthen. So I think City have to. I think they're going to struggle because of what Matt said about all of those players on that injury list, having to come back. Players might not like the idea of going to City to only sort of be a short-term stopgap. But I personally think they absolutely have to strengthen. And and I think Gareth Taylor, he's going to have to try and whittle down the squad and maybe take the risk that they might get hit with more injuries. But as far as I can see, I don't think it can really get any worse. So I think they have to strengthen, and if that means letting others leave because they want more game time, then I think it needs to be done.
Yeah. Matt, I'll bring you in with Leicester then.
Go on.
We mentioned Leicester a little earlier, the goalkeeper situation. Where can you kind of see them either strengthening or moving things around in January?
Well, two sides to this. From my side, sort of before I'd spoken to who I'd spoken to, I said, having seen them, I'd get another forward, probably midfielder and maybe a wide player, as well as obviously a goalkeeper like on loan, because that massively makes sense. Kirsten Lavell's been outstanding this season, and for her to be injured till sort of February, March time is a bit of a blow. That squad for me is good enough to stay up. So somebody like a Carly Telford coming in would be brilliant, even if it's like a short-term loan. But I think on the other side, somebody said to me at the club, they've been scouting in Scandinavia and they've been doing it for quite a while. So obviously reading Emma's article before, and there was a few players in there just sort of mentioned in general as potentially coming to the WSL. Me putting two and two together based on conversations, thinks that they may end up at Leicester. One of them, maybe two of them. I know one of them, I think, is a defender, centre half, so that would make sense to me. The other conversation I had, and this was a couple of months ago now, sort of saying they Chelsea for players on loan, but wages were an issue. So I don't know, whether they've, obviously Telford's been mentioned, whether they've come to, listen, it may not be Telford, but whether they've come to some sort of agreement. But I think the communication I got was even their fringe players that are in the first team are on a heck of a lot of money and outside their budget. So it just depends, doesn't it? Do you go for broke because you want to stay up, or you just sort of sit tight with what you've got? The players that are out at the minute, Lavell's, obviously, like I said, February, March, Hannah Kane's out for the season. At the minute, for me, there's a big gap in between the link of midfield to attack. And that's why, for me, we've not seen Tasha Flint or Jess Sigsworth get the service that maybe, will help them score goals. But goals have been a big issue for them. They've not been dreadful at the back. It's easy to sit here and think, well, they've conceded a load, but like I said, the games I've seen, there's just been little bits missing. It's a young squad as well. So I think for me, potentially, 3, maybe 4 would come in, and then they'd perhaps look at the summer. But again, got to be interesting. But like I said, they've definitely been scouting in Scandinavia. I'm just not going to tell you, told me that, because I got flattened. But yeah.
Yeah. Just on that, like we spoke about the battle for the top 4 with City and United potentially needing to invest. About the bottom 2 dilemma with Birmingham and Leicester, do they need to kind of just invest just to make sure that they stay up?
Yeah, well, as Matt says, I expect both of them to be extremely active. I actually think there'll be more than 4 signings at Leicester. I think already I've I reckon there's at least 4 already that might be pretty much kind of there or thereabouts. But yeah, as I've sort of put in the article, they're facing a lot of competition from Birmingham and from Reading. Reading were in a similar position and Kelly Chambers has been very open about this. They were financially struggling a bit in the summer after COVID, like the entire club, the men's side as well. So naturally, they've all been working on tight budgets, and she's done a fantastic job there. So they will obviously try and strengthen, but they're going to have to be smart about it. And Leicester and Birmingham are sort of the same. Leicester, I think that it'll be a bit more interesting because I think there might be more outgoings as well. I know that there's a couple of players who might potentially leave on loan. There are discussions that are sort of taking place. And I think there was some players who potentially might have left on loan previously that might now decide to stay because they've got good relationships with Lydia Bedford. One of the players I mentioned, who I know both clubs, Leicester and Birmingham, are looking at alongside Reading, was a young English midfielder called Izzy Sibling, who's just come back from America. So obviously Lydia will know her well from her time working sort of within the FA. So there's lots of links there. I think there'll be a lot of Championship players who will have caught the eye. I know that there's Coventry players that I know will probably come on to Coventry, I'm sure. But yeah, I know there's Coventry players who have been looked at by those 2 clubs. But yeah, as you say, I think in terms of staying up, they have to get it right. But I think obviously I went to Leicester and spent a day with Lydia Bedford and at the training ground with 2 other journalists, and we had really interesting conversations with her on record about her plans and her vision. She's made it clear that she wants to obviously progress players, develop players naturally from her background working with the England youth team setup, but also I think she wants to do things her way. So I think it's natural that she might want to offload a few maybe and bring a few in January. But I think she's also wary that, they've only got a few months, so she doesn't want to chop and change too much. So Birmingham will be in a similar situation. And obviously they have a hell of a lot less in terms of resources to work with. So there will be some movement, but it's going to be shrewd business, I think. I think that's probably the key word.
We'll just move on and touch on like some of the other WSL teams that you did mention. Spurs is one that took my eye. I think that's another popular rumour going around with Mewis actually training with them as well.
Yeah.
Is it a bit like Man United, the fact that because it's spoken about so much, it gets hyped up, or do you actually see something in this one?
I think there's actually a lot more in that one, but I think there would have been actually. And if I'd put the piece out 2 weeks earlier, which I kind of wanted to do, but there just wasn't enough in it. It was always due to go out today. But yeah, like I was made aware early December. I'm trying to think when it was now. She was training for a full week anyway at Spurs, and there was genuine conversations. I know she was very interested to move to London. Obviously, Spurs were clearly very keen on her. But, NWSL clubs, they were offering a lot of money. Spurs would have had to have competed. I don't think they would have been able to compete with the amount of money. I think they would have been, but I don't think they would have blown their entire transfer budget on one player, essentially. But then I have also heard that there might have been issues around getting a work visa. Getting a work permit. So ultimately that it might have been a mixture of that and Spurs obviously having to compete with NWSL clubs that are paying out a lot of money. But like I said, I heard there was real genuine interest from both parties on that one, but I don't think it will happen now.
Just going to move on, John, to West Ham and Brighton, because I'm just looking now, and obviously I think it was mentioned that Emma sort of mentioned, potentially a forward for West Ham and Brighton strengthening in 1 or 2 positions as well. And I think it's interesting because both teams have scored 12 goals this season. So you kind of think a forward from the outside, anyway, looking at it, it makes sense for both. But I think in Brighton's case, it's really interesting because for me, flying up there, defence for me looks really good. Megan Walsh, again, quality keeper. So you look at it and you think, did he actually need a lot in terms of Brighton? For me, potentially maybe a forward and, I don't know, a midfielder. I mean, I've not seen a lot of Brighton, to be fair, and the same for West Ham. You could say, again, a forward, but it's sort of interesting because, like we mentioned before, obviously West Ham, they've obviously got a budget there. And it seems to have this year, for me, overtaken Reading. Obviously, we mentioned before, didn't we, about Reading's problems, but would you be surprised, Emma, to see sort of wholesale changes in both West Ham and Brighton, or do you think sort of like you couple of players would be coming in and maybe the odd one fringe player going out? Or
I think it's completely different. Yeah, I think West Ham, I'm expecting it to be busy. I think I might have put that in the piece. I'm expecting it to be busy. Ollie Harder, like I said, has been quite open. I don't think they'll go out and just, I don't think they're going to go buy 4, 5, 6 players. But they could potentially do that. I know that they've got a lot of targets, and I know that they're looking at a lot of players. They have been for a while. I think their recruitment process, from what I've heard, is very strong, and it's very kind of structured and well organised, and they sort of it's an ongoing thing. So I don't think they'll be rushing into any last minute deals. But like I said, I expect them to be active, and actually I think pretty much every team in the WSL is after a forward, which is what makes this January transfer window really interesting, because there's a lot of players who probably they're going to be competing with other clubs. So Brighton, I actually think, is kind of a little bit the opposite. Brighton have always under Hope never gone and brought in 4 or 5 players at once. And again, she's been quite open about this. I think she often brings in 2, 3 players max, really, and just kind of builds the squad. She's been doing that for a while, and obviously they're starting to see the success from that, and they're just gaining consistency and doing well. So I think genuinely, when it might sound a bit cliche, but I think when she says if there's a player out there who we think will fit, it will fit in well, I genuinely think that's what Brighton will do. They spend a lot of time looking at the character of players. They really, really do, and that's really important for them. So I won't be surprised if maybe 2 players come in, 2 or 3, but I'm not expecting Brighton to be busy.
Just before we move on to Coventry and the Championship, top of the table, WSL, Arsenal, Chelsea, can you kind of see them making any moves, or would they be happy with what they've got, or would they even just buy talent just so nobody else does? Can you kind of see anything happening with the top 2 teams up there?
Well, I knew that they were working on the Sam Kerr deal for a long time. That was a massive priority for Chelsea. Obviously, that was dealt with very early on. So they've obviously brought in a young defender. I think there might be maybe 1 or 2 that they might look to bring in just to improve the squad depth. But from what I've heard so far, I'm not expecting any big signings at Chelsea. I think it'll be quite quiet. And like I say, the same sort of players are always being inquired about. The Carly Telfords, the Bethany Englands, people are always asking about getting them in on loan. So naturally, there'll be talk around those players. But I'm not expecting too much at Chelsea. Arsenal's an interesting one because, and I did put this in the piece, I haven't heard of them identifying a specific forward or a specific defender, but there has been talk about them maybe looking to bring in a bit more cover for obviously Leah Williamson's injury, just to sort of get them over the line. Obviously, that they've played a lot of games, and they will be playing a lot of games, so that might be something they look into. Same with the forward line. Obviously, they've had a bit injuries to Tobin Heath. There's always constant rumours around Miedemar's situation and whether or not she's going to stay on. So I wouldn't be overly surprised if they strengthened in either or one of those areas. And Jonas has always been quite open about him sort of looking. And I think he, like Ollie Harder, they're 2 managers who are quite, I think they enjoy the transfer window. I get the impression that they sort of enjoy scouting, and they obviously have, wide-ranging contacts. So I'm intrigued by Arsenal. I've not heard too many names, but I would expect a little bit of business there. Yeah, I would, but I think it'll be quiet at Chelsea.
Matt, just finishing off with the WSL, Arsenal, Chelsea. can you see one of them teams just kind of just investing just to kind of get them over the edge? Can you see a bit of business there in January, or they'll just play with what they got?
I mean, it's difficult, isn't it? Obviously, I don't really think either squad really need, someone major. I mean, to be fair, I think if, like I say again, only looking at it from the outside, there may be sort of outgoings on loan, maybe permanently. I don't know. There's been a lot of talk, mainly from our fans actually, on Beth England and does she want regular game time and stuff like that. But yeah, I wouldn't expect huge changes for either. Maybe one player for each, but I couldn't tell you what position because I've not seen sort of enough of either team, to be honest. But yeah, I think it's more for them. It's probably more about summer if they need anyone. Obviously we saw last summer that Chelsea didn't bring in very many. Arsenal brought in quite a few. But yeah, I'd be surprised. Like I said, I don't think either squad really needs to be added to. But wouldn't be surprised to see the odd one.
And we just end the show talking about the Championship then. I know that you wrote quite a bit about Coventry United players. How do you think that some of those players are faring coming into January?
Yeah, there's a lot of talk naturally around the Coventry United players. I think there will be quite a few that are obviously going to be spending time at a lot of clubs. I already know several players have trained with several clubs or have been in contact with several clubs over the last week or so. Obviously, I reported in the article that Ria Hardy was at Villa on Tuesday and Wednesday, I'm aware. Not sure whether she was there again today, as in Thursday that we're recording this. And then, yeah, she's obviously had interest from Durham. I've heard of, several other Championship clubs. Katie Wilkinson naturally has had a lot of interest as well. I know there's at least 2 or 3 WSL clubs that have shown interest, and then obviously the kind of the top half of the Championship. I think she's keen for full-time football, so that might rule out the likes of Sheffield United, etc., who are obviously part-time, who's obviously a former club of hers. So those 2 in particular got interest, but yeah, I know that there's a lot. There's a lot that are sort of looking at clubs, particularly in the Championship. But yeah, it'd be interesting to see where sort of like your Molly Greens, your Liv Clarks, those kind of players end up. But yeah, there's a lot of interest in the Coventry players. One club I know that probably won't be dipping in is Liverpool, because their squad cap is pretty much full. I reported in the piece that they've agreed to deal with a striker. They obviously announced a young goalkeeper that's come in as well to replace sort of Riley Foster, who's obviously out injured long term. So Liverpool are pretty much done, I think. But yeah, Durham might look to try and make a bit of ground. So Durham might be a good destination, I think, for either a Ria Hardy or a Katie Wilkinson. So they're one to keep an eye on, because that could really make things interesting at the top of the Championship. But yeah, there'll be a hell of a lot of movement, I think, in the Championship in January.
Yeah, just to sort of add to that, John, I think, I sort of, and I know this will probably upset the Villa fans, but it's tough. I know there's a lot of talk when me and Nat went to that last Coventry games. It turned out to be Villa and Watford, and they were sort of saying, we want Rio. And I think at the time as well, Lydia Bedford was actually there scouting players. So, again, I won't be surprised maybe if 1 or 2 perhaps move to Leicester. But I think, Rio, I said, was somebody that, she's done well for Coventry. And I think if she can step it up, so somebody like a Durham would be perfect, because that's top end. You've sort of gone from lower Championship to top end. So I think for me, if she made that step up and continued to score goals and then step up to sort of WSL, that'll do the world of good. But yeah, be interesting to see. I just hope they all get fixed up. I mean, it's great that we're sitting here talking about, your Molly Greens and your Wilcos and Rio, but hope for the others as well. Some good young players in there that'll easily end up in the Championship as well. So yeah, I think another interesting one, she kind of gave it away on Instagram on a story, is Molly Green. She's been training with a club. For those that are eagle-eyed, scored a free kick from a ridiculous amount. It was like 30, 40 yards. I believe that was an inter-training game for a club in the Midlands. So, but yeah, again, might not happen. Might just be training to keep fit. But yeah, we shall see. It'd be interesting anyway. But there's at least 5 or 6 like quality players there that could easily end up, top half of the championship, lower half of WSL. I think Katie Wilkinson started off, I believe, at Birmingham WSL, but again didn't really play too much, wouldn't have experienced it as it is now. So again, for me, she's more than capable. Like I said before, Leicester need goals, Birmingham need goals. I don't know if she'd go back, Villa as well. So yeah, should be interesting in terms of the championship.
Yeah, we're going to end the show on the second article that you put out, Emma, on the same day, just about Coventry United. You just want to touch on that a little bit, and then obviously we can put the links in the description and everything, so people can click on that as well. And Matt, you just kind of finish the show, just giving your thoughts on that as well.
Yeah, basically, I spoke to the assistant manager, Katie Rowson, today. She was, I really appreciated her time. It was really good to obviously hear from her and hear that firstly that she had a good Christmas. I know it's been a tough time for everyone at the club. But yeah, it's I just wanted to get a bit of information on kind of what the next steps were really. So obviously that's kind of what I've been trying to find out. And I think there's going to be a very interesting process that's likely to take place. Obviously, the FA will naturally be expected to sort of have the discussions around the license agreement. Those discussions will take place with the sort of the club directors, the investors, the administrators, all those kind of parties. And those processes tend to take a while. You would imagine it would go to an independent board at the FA. It would be a lot of that sort of tick boxing exercises. But there's a lot of decisions to make. Obviously, I listed a couple of the options that could happen in the article. So you've got, they might scrap the relegation in the championship. They might look to expunge results that have involved Coventry United, which I think is going to be a really interesting one because that would have ramifications on a lot of teams. For example, Watford, who are currently bottom, that could essentially save their place in the championship. And then obviously you've got the title race at the top where, Durham actually lost to Coventry. Whereas Liverpool won their game. So obviously if the points are taken away, then essentially Durham kind of gain there because Liverpool won't get those points that they'd won, whereas Durham don't really lose anything. So there's a lot of ramifications, which is why I think it'll be a lengthy process. But yeah, for the players themselves, obviously they're trying to get support from the PFA, but I believe it's only WSL players who have had that support. So there's only, I think, 2 or 3 maybe 4 within the entire squad really who have kind of got that representation. Katie Wilkinson, I know, has spoken to the PFA on behalf of all of the players and asked for for some support there. There's obviously the crowdfunding page which has been set up, which I think is almost at 5,000 now. And obviously the staff, they've spoken to the LMA, which is the League Managers Association, for support for them. But as Katie told me earlier, excuse me, it's a difficult situation because obviously it's mid-season, so there's not many clubs that are going to be hiring new members of staff. So I actually think it's probably the staff that are going to have more of a problem because, like I said, the players naturally in January there's never a good time, obviously, but they're kind of fortunate in a way that it's during a transfer window. So clubs do have that kind of luxury to have a look at the players and the time to sort of look at the players, which obviously helps. So as we've already spoken about, with a lot of players going in and training, that's been helpful. But that's sort of the next step really, is just sort of, what support they can get and the decision that ultimately will probably come from the FA, whenever that may be.
Yeah, I think sort of building on that, John, and I've just had a look now, it's actually hit, it's gone over 5,000 now, 5,143.
Nice.
It's halfway there, which is good because there's still 3 weeks left. And I know there's a lot of links out there to sort of, point you in the direction. So anybody that can donate, please do. But yeah, I think just to touch on that, we just need clarity. Like, I think that's the most annoying thing. I get that it's Christmas and people may not be working, but this is a sort of a situation where for me it's urgent. And like I say, I get that people close offices at the FA and things like that, but it's just the lack of clarity and the lack of sort of support is worrying. And obviously we've all talked about, the PFA not being available to help in the championship. And I think for me, that's something that needs to change. I just think it's a shame because it shouldn't have to get to the stage where we lose clubs, where lessons sort of get learnt or inquiries start and conversations start, happening. But yeah, I think, it's difficult. I mean, we spoke, me and Nat, a lot about this about a week or two ago on the show that should have been about Skinner. But it's one of them where, you just hope now that players and staff, like I mentioned earlier, can get fixed up, that conversations are had, that support's given. And yeah, I'm struggling to add more words, John, to what I've already spoke about, but it's just the situation that, you don't want to see happening. I think the last time I recall was Notts County, and that was right before the spring series, and they pulled their squad, and it shouldn't be happening. Not in the second tier women's football. So yeah, I'll leave it at that, and I'll pass back to Emma.
Yeah, it's a difficult situation, I think, because on the clarity thing, essentially, obviously, the club is officially going into liquidation on the 4th of January, and then after that, there isn't really another update until obviously, you essentially get what the ramifications are in terms of from the FA standpoint on the license agreement. And obviously that's something which you're just not going to get quickly. I do know that the FA are actually even over the Christmas period, naturally, there'll be less members of staff around, but I know that they are going to be working hard. And I've sort of, I would expect that. But I think it's a difficult one because in terms of the license agreement, obviously that's kind of between the FA and the club directly. The PFA support is an interesting one because, again, up until the last 2 years, there weren't that many full-time teams in the championship. So it's almost like the game has kind of grown too quickly, I guess, in the championship, I think. And, one of the phrases that Katie used in her interview with me was that perhaps there was a mismatch of expectation, probably from the investors. So, the ones that pulled out had a 49% share. And there's been obviously talk about, them maybe wanting better results or whatever from the professionalism. But it was actually advanced by a year earlier because of COVID and Brexit. They brought it forward by a year. So I think if you bring in all of your plans forward by a year, then naturally, there's less time to prepare for it, things like that. So I think it's a really difficult situation in terms of the clarity point because, like I said, there's a lot of different parties that have to speak to different varying people involved in the club and the investors and stuff. So that's probably where it's at the moment.
I think just one more bit from me, John, before we wrap. I think as well, thinking about sort of like ramifications of it in terms of results as well. And I said this sort of on the Thursday show with Nat that, if they take points off other teams, sort of where does that leave the FA Cup? Because they beat Watford, didn't they? So Watford get a retrieval as well. But what I did say on that Thursday show was, obviously I think the points coming off was in the rules. So I think if that does happen, it is important for me that Watford don't go down, that there is no relegation. Because I think, just because Coventry have gone to liquidation, hopefully it doesn't penalise Watford in that way. Obviously, it's unfortunate that other clubs lose points, but then it's like the clubs that haven't played them or haven't played them for the second time. It's also not fair on them sort of losing out the chance to gain points as well, potentially. So it's a difficult situation. I can see why it takes time, but hopefully they can sort of find a happy medium. And like I say, for me, that would be keeping Watford up, no relegation. May as well put Watford back in the cup as well and give them that place so that obviously sorts that and evens that up. But yeah, sort of remains to be seen, I guess, until we hear some more news.
Emma, thank you for coming on. It's opened the transfer season up nicely.
You're welcome.
You'll have to come back on in 4 or 5 weeks' time just to kind of assess it as well and see what's happened. It'll be good to see what happens. Twitter's always saying one thing and maybe something else happens. But absolutely. Thank you very much for coming on, Emma. We'll put all no, it's always a pleasure, and I know a lot of people will be looking forward to hearing what you have to say. Matt, obviously got a few shows lined up this week. Tuesday, your show will be a bit of a roundup for 2021 across both leagues, won't it? WSL and Championship. So that'll be an interesting one for us to do. And obviously we'll have a show on Thursday, Friday, and Saturday. Ben's back. So that'll be good as well. Saturday Night Live. So plenty to look forward to there. Thank you to everybody. Leave a comment, and we'll get back to you. And hope you all have a happy New Year. Thank you very much, guys.
Cheers.